Okay, so a little bit about what I think is going on here. Um, in general, I suppose the Black Lives Matter movement specifically, kind of. But I was reading an article about, you know, how many white supremacists there are in the US. And the article is basically like more than you would think, but much less than it's made out to be. And they did a really fair, look at it. And he mentioned how, I think it was a black person who wrote it, because he mentioned how his mother would tell him as a kid, be careful what you say because you never know who you're talking to. You could be talking to a member of the KKK. And that could be your boss, or it could be, a police officer. And your life you can get screwed over if you speak up or speak out. So that was the situation. And but I feel like that the equity movement, it's like a pendulum, right? So in the 1960s, it swings over here, and you better be careful what you say if you're black. And then there was a fight to make it equal, right? But because that fight, right, the fist, because that fight has gained so much momentum, it swings over here, and now we're kind of in the space, 50 years later. But we've been here for a while, I suppose. But it's probably at its peak, like the pendulum over here, way at its peak. And now you have to be careful what you say if you're against the narrative, really, because black people get canceled just as much as white people that go against the narrative of systematic racism is the number one issue in America, right? And that racism is why you don't see the numbers in STEM with black people or whatnot. So, I mean, who's the hunted now, really? Now, don't get me wrong, there is racism, and I don't think I would, if I had the choice to become black, I don't think I would. I think there's enough racism still to where I wouldn't want to have that color. That's all I know for sure, So, still problems. There probably will always be problems. It's never been better, and it's never been harder to question the narrative. It's become religious in nature. So who's being hunted now? I think it's pretty obvious. When you're not allowed to question the narrative, question the narrative. And if you have to do it silently to keep your job, do it silently to keep your job. But question the narrative and express yourself amongst your family if you can trust them. I mean, in the Marxist revolution, which is kind of what we're in the middle of right now, your sons, daughters, mothers, they can be the enemies. Just watched about that documentary about that boy from North Korea. He's a man now, but he tattled on his parents because they did something uncommunist or whatever. Who knows? I can't remember what it was. And then he left the Korea, and he knows that his dad was murdered because he left. Like, it's scary. It can get a lot scarier than this. I mean, luckily, you just lose your job or your finances, or your wife or your kids. At least you're not marched to Gulag. Well, I mean, actually, that cop who was not very well trained shot the guy in the back because he thought he had who knows, if I thought he had a gun. He was being shot. I mean, whatever. It was, don't resist arrest if you don't want to get shot is the story of that, But he's going to jail for 11 counts of like homicide and murder. So he's actually going to maybe get the death penalty because of this kind of Marxist movement that's going on, that's piggybacking on the real problem of racism to bring Maoism to America.